We've seen what happened in Bayda. Now there's similar processes being negotiated with Galmudug. So that is what they are really against. Conversations are now going to be more difficult because of Israel's
Recognition.
interference. I saw a tweet from the office of the Prime Minister appointing a new minister. And right at that point, so that kind of surprised me because we're still having communication, we're talking, there's no,
Somalia has had 5 foreign ministers since 2020. The country's president right now, President Mahmoud, Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud, is operating past the end of his constitutional term. 2 of its federal states, sort of like presidents, no longer recognize the government. A coalition of former presidents and prime ministers is openly building a parallel political track. None of that is happening in isolation. Mohamed, Abdul-Zak, Mahmoud, thank you for joining me. With that introduction, I keep coming back to one question. Does Somalia have an electoral crisis, or is it just a name that we're giving it?
Very interesting. I think it's a name we're giving it. It goes beyond electoral. In fact, it's about revisiting the political settlement that we've had for the last 20 years, the power sharing formula, the provisional constitution that was adopted in 2012, August of 2012. It is about the federal arrangements that we have, the relationship between the states and the federal. It's about having a functioning parliament and democratic institutions. And all of those things are combined and only becomes a crisis at the end of every 4 years.
And why is that? Because it's the same thing that happened with the former president Farmajo, and now we've seen the same thing.
It is because people sometimes want to settle. They do not want to go through the processes that are established.
And I'll ask again, and why is that?
Because for some, it might be the easy way to win. Might be the easy way to manipulate. It might be the easy way to make money because it's a corrupt practice, right? And some people will stick to the constitution and the process, and others want to circumvent that and find some other ways to either continue to stay in power or have an influence. So it is electoral to some extent, but it's really about who controls Somalia for the next 5 years or even a decade. And that is what this is all about. But it's never been a situation where elections were not discussed before the end of the term, except this time. And then we can see how close it got to armed confrontation. And the result could be a collapse of the state again, already a weak state, could collapse. And that could lead to Somalia becoming fragmented, as other players are influencing various parties. We see what's happening in Somaliland. As you mentioned, Puntland and Jubaland are saying they do not recognize the federal government. So it is really a very dicey situation. It's very dangerous.
And is the root cause the constitution itself? I mean, is there a constitution sort of like crisis, and what's the actual sort of like legal and political mechanism that can let that happen? Courts, there's no referee. Like in such a situation, the term constitutional crisis is thrown, every time.
Mm-hmm. So during the town hall meeting, I spoke about the need for institutions to work, and for people not to rely on personalities and rather have institutions. What is happening in this case is that the president, Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud, has pushed for constitutional amendments. Now, we're not talking about the merits of the substance of what he wanted to change, but many do not agree with it because of the process. It's seen as a unilateral process, manipulated by money and favors and so forth. But one of the changes that he made was that the term of office for the president and the parliament to be not 4 years, but 5 years, right? And then turns around and says, actually, it starts now. It starts from my term.
And there's no due process to that.
Well, normally if the executive does something like this, then you have independent judiciary and all the way to a constitutional court. And that is not there. And that is what I mean by having the right institutions to arbiter such situation. Yeah.
I'm just curious. You were a foreign affairs minister for 1 year, and you worked under President Farmajo. This is the same thing that happened with Farmajo in 2021. And I know we talked about it, but I just want us to get into the details about it. It seems that it's sort of like a pattern that it's forming itself with every president coming. There's sort of like one doesn't want to leave office, and then by the end of the term, there's sort of like complications and stuff like that. So does that tell you something about the office itself, or just whoever keeps ending up on that seat?
So let me share with you something that people do not really know in reality. And that is, when I became a foreign minister, there was, just before I became foreign minister, there's usually something called NCC, National Consultative Council, which consists of the president, the prime minister, and the heads of the states, the federal member states. And this is where they have a lot of policy discussions, right? Now, the meeting that they had, they have decided how the elections were going to take place. And in that, especially the federal member states wanted to have the electoral body to be 2 levels, right? The state level, which is called SEIT, S-E-I-T, State Electoral Independent Team, and FEAT, which is at the federal level. So the SEIT are supposed to be 8 people, and the federal government adds 3 to that. So every state provides their 8 people, and the federal government adds. All others provided their teams, except Puntland and Jubaland. So I went to Puntland to speak with President Denny as in advance. And the Prime Minister then came also to have this discussion.
Is that Roble?
Yes. And President Denny refused to do that because, again, like I said, people wanted to find another way to push out President Farmajo without election. So they wanted to create pressure in Mogadishu and have these federal states, especially these two, not to provide their teams so that you cannot have an election, but the clock's ticking. And the president is accused of not holding elections, right? So that was really the case. And until, Somalia's international partners intervened and negotiated, and that's how the elections were held. But of course, we ran over time. And now, President Hassan Sheikh does not even want to discuss and says that we will have a one person, one vote, when we in reality know it is not a real or genuine universal suffrage. It is still going to be a 4.5 power sharing formula. We still know that the whole country cannot have an election. We still know, so many obstacles. And to have credible elections, you need to agree on the law, you need to have security, you need to have finance, and you need to have time. Then that is how you will ensure an election that is inclusive, that's fair, transparent, and accountable.
And where is Somalia right now to that regards?
Well, right now, negotiations are going to be taking place. Everyone realizes the election of 2022 was not fair. It was this indirect election. And by the way, Article 64 of the Constitution and Article 72 of the Constitution specify that people can vote for their elected representatives, right? So it's a constitutional right. And same as Article 46, paragraph 2, which allows all Somalis who are eligible to register and vote. That's their right. So what is happening is that the election of 2022, people do not want to go back to that.
Okay.
But we also don't have all the mechanisms, all the facilities, the finance, the security, the whatever, to do an actual election.
One man, one
One
vote.
man, one vote. We cannot, right? So somewhere in the middle, we have to find a way to have an election model that is fair, that allows the maximum number of people to vote, even if it is still going to be a 4.5. And that is where the negotiations will all come in, and people will give their, that is what needs to be negotiated.
What would you say were the sort of like missed opportunities for Somalia to achieve one man, one vote, sort of like elections?
Yeah, I mean, before I became a foreign minister, at some point I was a senior advisor to the President Formaggio, on elections and democratization. And we have done an amazing job of bringing together not only Somali experts, but actual institutions to come together and work together, consulted with international experts to come up with an election model that could be achievable. That some people felt threatened. They did not want to go through with that. After we have worked on this, after the states have agreed to it and signed it, it was taken to Parliament, and the Parliament has appointed 15-member ad hoc committee who started over and came up with their own version of elections, which was not implementable. So that's how we went back to the indirect election again. Yeah.
Yeah. You were Foreign Affairs Minister for 1 year, and I mentioned in my intro there's been 5 in sort of like the past 5 years. I'm just wondering, can Somalia run a coherent foreign policy at all, while its own legitimacy at home is this contested?
That's a fair question. And, but it's not only a reflection of the domestic policy. Foreign policy is also about interacting, the international relations part of it, whether it's bilateral or Somalia's membership to various organizations, both at regional and global, and its obligations to work with that. So it's still a very important portfolio. And even though, as you said, there are domestic issues that we need to deal with, still that doesn't absolve you from dealing with your foreign relations and foreign policy. Somalia is a member of the Islamic Organization Cooperation, IOC. It's a member of the Arab League. It's a member of IGAD. It's a member of the African Union. It's a member of the United Nations. It's a member of so many different organizations. And from the establishment of these organizations, there are agreed on founding documents that Somalia signed up to. And so that you have to be part of that, and you have to work with all of those countries.
I want us to sort of like go back to the elections. Elections are supposed to solve disputes, they're supposed to like move the country forward. But it's the very thing that sort of leaders from Somalia do not agree on. From where you sit, what do you think about that?
So this is the very interesting thing that a lot of people do not really understand. Up until now, every election, both at state and federal, people like to see the transparent process where all the MPs, we have an indirect system. MPs vote for the president. And votes are counted right there and then, and the result is accepted. And the transition is automatic. It happens right at that hour. For a country that has come out of civil war and state collapse, to have seen at least 5 transitions like that, it's phenomenal. I mean, it's not perfect, but that has been the way it has operated. And I think it's dynamics that are different from other countries in the region.
Yeah, because I want to sort of like play the devil's advocate here. Somaliland, on the other side, for 3 decades, they're running their own military, they have their own currency. Somalia has all that at its display. But then again, when you look at the differences, Somaliland are able to hold the elections sort of like peacefully. Why is Somalia not able to do that, having all the resources at play? And we just don't want to say Somalia has been through civil war. It's true, but what is the one thing that is not able to make Somalia recognize sort of and go through the process of democracy like in other countries?
Yeah. Well, like I said, first of all, institutions are very important. And the rule of law is very important. And you have to enforce those things. And it's the inability to sometimes enforce becomes a problem. The absence of certain institutions like the courts and independent judiciary is a problem. So it has become a tradition to kind of bargain. It's elite bargaining that goes on, and that is how settlements are reached. That is different from the long-term vision, which is to really have smooth elections year in, year out, every term. to have established election process, because of these elite bargains that are taking place. But I think what is going to happen now, after these negotiations, that might actually set Somalia on the right path to having a more something much more closer to universal suffrage next time. Because, as I said, everyone that I talk to is talking about increasing or enlarging the electorate, having a little bit more transparent and fairer process. Where that will actually settle, we don't know, but that is gets us closer to having universal suffrage elections.
Yeah, and in contrast to that, there's the Somali Future Council, which is sort of like the opposition against the federal government. You talked about Somalia looking forward, and there's like negotiations and the due process that's going to happen. How does the Somali Future Council complicate all this progress that you talk about?
So the Future Council consists of a number of individual politicians who, by the way, all of them want to run for president.
Eventually.
Yes.
The federal
presidents.
Okay.
All right. And they found by having a coalition, it helps them go against the incumbent. And so that then plus Jubaland and Puntland becomes the Future Council, right? So this is where, bargaining happens. They, I think, recently just put out what they think the model of election should be.
Framework, yeah.
But they have to also negotiate internally to come up with their position. You have that. Then you have the federal government led by former President Hassan Sheikh. And then you have former President Formaggio. And these are the different groups that are going to be negotiating.
And how does that look like from where you sit?
We'll have to see. I don't know, don't really have a lot of details, but I think they were asked to provide people at technical level to come and start the negotiations, and then the next thing it will move, to the next stage until you have a final agreement. So I know that it was supposed to start, but perhaps hasn't yet.
Yeah, but what is a bit contradicting to me, from where I sit, could you explain to me, like a 5-year-old, why would I have to create sort of a coalition that's against the federal government and then give A, B, C, and D saying that this is how the election should be? Is it not just easy to just say, hey, I'm running for this position, I want to be elected as president, and sort of like follow the due process? Why create a coalition against the federal government?
Because the president tried to change the constitution. He is past his mandate. He is manipulating the election, and unless you have an opposition to challenge the government, he will get away with, what we've seen. Yeah, we've seen what happened in Bayda. Now there's similar processes being negotiated with Galmudug. So that is what they are really against. So it is good that they've come together to put pressure on the government to point out the things that are wrong and how the election are being manipulated, and that they cannot participate in such an election. And that's why they need to come up with another model, and everybody has to provide So
You talked about citizen participation and how
Yes.
that's really important. And I attended your town hall meeting 3 days ago. You had like a strong emphasis on that. Could you sort of like elaborate more about that and how that would be really such a crucial element to strengthening the institutions in Somalia?
yeah, so absolutely. Without citizen participation, democracy doesn't really mean much, right? And I'm not talking about only elections. I'm talking about in general issues. If we want to discuss policy, or if you want to, so the parliamentarians have to do consultations with their citizens. So citizens have to be interested enough to participate in that. If we're talking about constitutional amendments, people have to come and talk and be part of it. What is being discussed is our future and the future of our children. And if you are not part of that, then the few who are there will have their say. And that's not something you don't want to, but you would have to live with it. And again, when it comes to elections, also let's increase, because, to just go back a little bit. Years back, in 2012, it was about 800 constitutional delegates who approved the Constitution and helped pick the parliamentarians who then, so because it's clan system, you have to go back to the 135 clan elders who according to certain formula, name the MPs. That is not democratic, right? So, but then next election, it was decided that we have to create delegates. So, put together 51 delegates to elect the next one. It's a slight improvement, but nowhere near where you have. Then the next election in 2022 was 101 delegates, right? So still, this can be bought, and people who are willing, who want to participate in that are not able to. So opening that up, and to the extent that people want to participate, it's a good thing. So, but it's not only elections. It's about all the other aspects of public, institutions and public life.
Yeah. Let's go back to sort of like, I'm going back again to Puntland and Jubaland. The two presidents are very vocal about, opposing, the current president extending his term.
Yeah.
How is that sort of like decentralization or fragmentation? It's something that I was thinking about earlier today.
Somalia as a country, we need to get to a point where the states and federal government have a coherent processes and procedures and whatnot. And that is where sometimes a lot of disagreements come. And, we are right here in the United States 250 years later. If you look at the number of cases in federal courts where the states have issues with the federal government or countersuing each other, so many, but life goes on. Nothing is shut down. But in Somalia, if we have a disagreement in one thing, everything
is stuck.
Is
hell-bent on that.
Up,
yeah. And would you say sort of like a broadly accepted election that would happen in Somalia, would that actually require anything that doesn't exist today?
Elections can really happen. It's about leadership, In Puntland, 3-4 years ago, they've done an election, but did it only for 3 districts. And if you see the pictures that came out of that, people lined up, long.
Is that something
lines.
Somali citizens really want to do?
They want to participate, and we have to allow them. Yeah, if you look at those pictures, you would be so happy to see that people want to really come out to elect. But then it was stopped for no good reason that I can think of. You know.
Yeah. So if sort of like elections happens and now like the people who are contesting, they're sort of like in a deadlock. I've had other people talking about negotiated political settlement. That is against what you were talking about earlier. I'm just wondering, is that something that is realistic to Somalia, or is just something that's eroded too far?
I think it would have to be, once again, negotiated settlement as to how the election is going to move forward. And so there are very specific technical issues that have to be discussed, because the federal member states have a role and the federal government has a role. The opposition, former presidents and former prime ministers and anyone who wants to run has a right? So we have to balance all of those. And for example, if one of the ideas that are being floated is that in 2022, there were only 2 locations per federal member state where the elections were taking place. This time we should make it 4. So which 4? Which additional towns or cities will be added to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, each state had a number of parliamentary seats that were there. So which seats go into these new locations? And that is actually even beyond just the federal member states. I think with some considerations for the clan, the population, has to come into. So those things have to be decided. No one has full confidence in the Electoral Commission that President Hassan Sheikh has appointed. How do they come? What is the formation of a new election commission? Has to be decided. So there are a number of things that are technical, but it has to be negotiated at the political level and has to be agreed on. Then it can be implemented.
Do you think that's feasible?
Yes. Yeah, it is feasible. We don't know if, I don't know how long it will take, but once they sit down, I think they will come to an agreement at some point.
I've listened to you talk, and you're very optimistic about the future and looking forward.
Yes.
And I'm just curious, when you think about, Somalia as a state in the next 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, what kind of state do you imagine it to be?
I don't know if there is any country in the world that has had the same experience that we've had. But I can only compare Somalia to Somalia itself, right? So I grew up in the 70s and 80s. In the Somalia we had then, where just like in developed countries, education was compulsory and it was free. Yeah, all the way to university was free. Healthcare was free. And that's not realistic at this point, but I'm saying that we had state institutions that were functioning. We had industries, so many, factories and industry and all of that were going on. We had agriculture. We were exporting livestock. The country was earning hard currency. All of those things were in place. Then the collapse came, and everything was gone overnight, right? So then I started working in Somalia again 25 years ago, about 10 years into the state collapse.
Oh, yeah.
And I see things are coming back up and are improving. And mainly because of its people. The Somali people are very resilient. And these people have established hospitals, they have established schools, they have established, again, factories. They have done all of those things. So, in fact, the role of the state, the government, is weak and missing. But the people, if they can do that, they established banks, they've established communication, and sometimes it's more advanced than countries that have a strong state.
So it's the government letting the people down.
A lot of times, yeah. But then people that's why I keep going back to the concept of citizen participation. These are not people from another planet. These are also Somalis.
Yeah.
But sometimes people like the shortcut, and I think if we put in place processes and then put in place accountability, that can work. And let's hope for a good leadership, the kind that I explained, leadership that consults, leadership that delegates and kind of oversees how, whole of government is coming together, leadership that can be trusted with the people's property, leadership that's visionary, that wants to work in every sector, that knows that they don't really have time,
Yeah.
So
let's talk about Somaliland. Somaliland was recently recognized back in December by Israel, being the first country to officially recognize it. They have opened an embassy in Jerusalem. I don't want to use the word sort of like complicate, but from foreign affairs spectrum and like where you sit, what are your thoughts about it?
Yeah. There are some difficult discussions that need to be had in Somalia with the elite and the leadership of Somaliland to really sort out whether it's grievances or arrangements or, even if there's going to be, for lack of better word, if there's going to be a total separation, divorce, you still need to have these discussions.
Conversations.
These conversations are now going to be more difficult because of Israel's
recognition.
Interference. Right?
Yeah. And why would you say that?
Because it gives hope to something that was never going to really happen in that way. Meaning, for countries to be recognized, you negotiate with the mother country, with the part that you are part of, right? And only with that consent can you go. There are how many countries became independent and recognized as a state since the end of World War II?
Yeah.
If you look at it, it's very few.
Very few.
It's not easy for countries to become countries like that so easily. And some countries, I think it's like, was it Kosovo, I think?
Yeah.
At one point reached about 104 other states recognizing, but it's still not a state. It's not in the UN, right? So now, whether Somalia and the northern regions come together Or not now. Now it's not. It's not the time.
It's not the time.
Now it's not really the time. That has to be pushed.
Why did you say now it's not the time? Just want to understand.
Because of all the hype, because of a lot of young people who bought into this idea that really the population, some of them have that understanding that this we have achieved now. It's not going to change anything at this point, right? So, yeah.
I mean, Somaliland is sort of like setting up a path where they, as an autonomous state and having a fully functional government with everything that comes with that, is that something that we might sort of try to see Puntland and Jubaland try to do if it pushes forward?
I'm glad you mentioned that because right now, really the idea of separatism is being pushed by one clan, right?
In Somaliland.
In Somaliland. And if this is not really negotiated and agreed on, whichever way we want to go, what will happen to every other clan? What will they say?
We want to break away.
They want to break away. And Somalis are how many clans? Somalia, how many countries is Somalia going to be? Right? That's the flip side. So it's not only that you go alone. No. Others will want to, and the level of fragmentation to what extent is that going to go? Is Puntland going to be a whole unit? Or are the clans in Puntland also going to demand that each one wants now to have its own territory and separate area? These are Somalis, and they like to copy each other, right?
Yeah.
So that is not good for regional stability or global or anything. And that's what I was talking about when I say that conversation now, we have to take a cooling period at least for now to come back and continue talking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where does Somalia join the East Africa community? Diplomacy-wise, where does it sit in the East African community and the neighboring countries?
The East African community joining makes a lot of sense, but in reality, think of it as a marketplace where all these members, 8 countries, can each bring something to this market, right? What is Somalia bringing to this market? That's what you have to think about. But you have agreed that others
have to
bring their products to you. And so there is that imbalance. And, it's about the free movement of goods and people, right?
Yeah.
And I think on the Somali side, people are just interested in free movement of people. And that is not automatic. It's not going to happen. It's,
Was it a smart move to join the EAC?
It needs some deliberation. It needs deliberate plans,
Like
as to
what?
how you... Well, but throughout the negotiations, what is the trade imbalance between Kenya and Somalia right now?
I imagine it's huge.
It's huge,
Yeah.
right? So how are we going to try to close that gap? What measurements do you need? So some of these issues are domestic issues that you need to deal with. Others is what you need to negotiate with other member states. And so I don't think all of those things, because it's the prestige of being part of the EAC, I think that is what was driving. I have achieved that, So, yeah.
This is something that I'm just personally curious about. When you were the Foreign Affairs Minister, 1 year into your term, you sort of like terminated, and you gave an interview and you said you were surprised and shocked, but also had tendered in your resignation letter. Why did that come as a surprise to you? It's not a trick question.
No. It's a good question, and I'd like to, there was no good time to really, to sit down and talk about it in an interview like this. So this gives me the opportunity actually to kind of clarify some of that. So there were some internal issues and discussions with which I was not satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
And based on that, I offered my resignation. I suggested the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was told, no, these issues will be resolved, and that's not going to happen. So, fine. Back to work, and almost a week into this, when I thought issues are
Everything
being dealt
cooled down.
with,
Yeah.
I saw a tweet from the office of the Prime Minister appointing a new minister. And right at that point, so that kind of surprised me, because we're still having communication, we're talking, there's no, why would that happen? I think I could speculate, but what happened right there and then is that a lot of journalists immediately, as soon as that tweet came out,
Mm-hmm.
called
Mm-hmm.
to ask me. And so my first reaction was the truth, I'm surprised too.
Mm-hmm.
But I also want to clarify, since then, I've been in very good contact with former Prime Minister and former President. President Formaggio is a good friend of mine. I liked his style of governing.
Mm-hmm.
I liked his leadership qualities, and I hope he does get another opportunity. I will be happy to support him
As a president?
as a president.
Are we going to see you back in his cabinet or
It's
in his team?
it's not out of self-interest, and I think that's what's good for the country.
Mm-hmm.
And we all have to do what is good for the country, whether I personally benefit from it or not. But if we continue to have the sort of constructive discussions and the way things are going,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's more likely that I will probably be in government. But I would not predict that so easily, because that takes quite an energy
Mm-hmm.
for someone to really go into that, the level of stress, the travel, the things that you have to deal with. But I have to consult with my family, and we'll see.
Do you have presidential ambitions? Is that something we keep talking about President Formaggio and Hassan Sheikh, but personally as Mohamed Abdul-Zak, is that something you sort of late at night keeps you awake?
Look,
Not verbatim, but
I'm just saying, you never really say never.
yeah.
But it's not something I'm contemplating on right now.
Mm-hmm. But in the future, is that something?
That could change, yes. Plus, I ran in 2016.
You did, yes.
Yeah. So that bug's still there somewhere.